A very good day to you, a very good evening to you if you're watching or listening from Kenya, and a very good day to you if you're watching or listening from abroad. Welcome to the Black Hotfire News update at 7 with me, Dimore. It is 6 minutes past 7 p.m. on the 17th of April 2024. And we are going to be looking at each and everything that has been happening throughout the whole of Africa, starting from Ghana, going to Kenya. We are going to be looking at Namibia. We are going to be looking at how a Bangladeshi ship was that had been seized by Somali pirates has been freed. I'm going to be looking at China's economic growth and how that relates with Africa. We're going to be looking at how donors have pledged 2.1 billion to aid war in Sudan, and they're also going to be looking at majorly we are going to be looking at Ghana and whether Ghana will find a way out of its debt trap. Ghana, like Nigeria, yesterday we were talking about Nigeria and why Nigeria is going through an economic crisis with an issue to do with public debt, with an issue to do with devaluation of the Nigerian naira. And today we are going to be looking at another country in Africa that has been going through the same, if not worse, has to be worse. The other country is Ghana. Ghana, I said, has to be worse because Ghana has gone to a point where it has had to default on its loans with the Bretton Woods institutions, not because it is very brave, not because it wants to stand up for itself, but because it didn't have any money to pay back the debt. So we're going to be looking at what has been happening in Ghana and why Ghana is still seeking for a deal with bondholders, despite the fact that it got a bailout from the IMF. It got a 3 billion bailout from the IMF for it to try and tackle some of the debts that it had, because Ghana's economy was going down, with the Ghanaian cedi losing value the same with the Nigerian naira. The government of Ghana did float its currency also, which led to it losing value. And of course, Ghana being a country that depends on imports, a lot of imports to do with everything. The same as is the same case in Nigeria, as is the same case with many African countries. It had to the devaluation of the Ghanaian cedi had to, of course, have effects on the economy. So let us look at how did Ghana find itself in this economic turmoil. If you can remember very well, about a few years ago, Ghana was actually in 2019, not even a long time ago. By 2019, Ghana was Africa's shining star. That was what the World Bank described Ghana as, the Africa's shining star. It had the world's fastest growing economy in 2019 after it doubled its economic growth. But today, it's no longer the economic poster boy of West Africa. Despite being a major cocoa and gold exporter, it is currently battling the worst financial crisis in decades, with inflation being at around 50.3%. That is the highest it has ever been in 21 years. So Ghana is no longer the poster boy, the Western poster boy that the World Bank was calling Africa's shining star. And this reminds me of Gaddafi saying, if it ever reaches a point where the West tell me I'm doing good, I have failed you as a people. This is what was happening in Ghana. In 2019, the World Bank described Ghana as the Africa's shining star, the West's poster boy. And Ghana is a rich country, to be honest. The World Bank was not wrong in calling it Africa's shining star. The motive behind the name might have been sinister, but describing Ghana as Africa's shining star is not an overstatement. In fact, it is the truth. Ghana is Africa's shining star. It is a major gold exporter. It is a major cocoa exporter. It is a country that is endowed with dozens and dozens of minerals. So calling it Africa's shining star, as I said, is not an overstatement. It is a matter of fact. Ghana is Africa's shining star. However, it is going through its worst financial crisis in decades, with inflation hovering at around 50.3%, the highest in 21 years. As I told you, Ghana's economic success in 2019 were in the limelight when the new government of President Nana Akufo-Addo, who is retiring soon, took power in January 2017. He brought down inflation significantly, but using the wrong mechanisms. Under the previous government in 2016, it was 15.4%. That was the level of inflation, and it fell to 7.9% by the end of 2019 and remained in single digits until the pandemic hit in March 2020. That is the COVID pandemic. So that is why President Nana Akufo-Addo is blaming the COVID pandemic for Ghana's economic woes, because according to him, before the pandemic, inflation rate in Ghana was at single digits. It was at 7.9 at the end of 2019. But after the pandemic, things went downhill. So Nana Akufo-Addo uses the pandemic as a scapegoat, saying that it was doing well before the pandemic. Ghana's budget deficit, which is about 6% of the nation's GDP, that is the gross domestic product, before Akufo-Addo government came into power, was brought down to less than 5% of GDP by the end of 2019. So Ghana's economy was doing well when Nana Akufo-Addo took power. But as I said, wrong mechanisms were used to achieve this, and that is why they didn't last for long and they backfired. One might argue that they used the same mechanism that the Kenyan government is using to stabilize the dollar. If you've been looking at the forex market, then you're going to notice that the Kenya's currency, Kenya is now the poster boy, the Western poster boy, to a point that President Ruto was named in the 100 most influential people in the world. I'm going to be telling you about that. So Kenya is doing a Ghana. It is also the poster boy at the moment, and it is going through what Ghana was going through in 2019. High economic growth rate. The Ghanaian said are doing very well against the US dollar. Heaps and heaps of praises being heaped on the new president. And the problem was the mechanisms that they used to achieve that. And I was saying, Azar, by the way, Kenya is now the new poster boy of the West. I'm coming back to Ghana in a bit. In fact, President Ruto was featured on Times Magazine list of 100 most influential people in the world. He was on Wednesday named among 100 most influential people in the world, and he was named alongside another Kenyan by the name of Kennedy Odede, who is a philanthropist, who is also the founder and the CEO of Shining Hope for Communities, Shofco. So, Time magazine said that Ruto has emerged as a key voice for Africa's climate ambitions, while also citing his new eminence in the global stage. So, Kenya is the new poster boy of the West. That is but a fact. Going, as I said, it is going through Ghana 2019. And I want them to listen to me keenly so that they can understand what is going to happen and what happened after Ghana's poster boy image. After COVID hit, in fact, after the growth that Ghana experienced from 2017 to 2019, most of it was coming from the oil sector. That is what Accra-based Policy Initiative for Economic Development reported. They said most of the growth was actually coming from the oil. And the people were so excited that the economy was growing, but they couldn't devise strategies to ensure that the growth reflected in other sectors of the economy. For instance, they neglected the agricultural sector, and they couldn't do any meaningful value-added investment in that sector. So the government became complacent. And also the method that the government used to achieve this was not the best methodology, because they heavily relied on public debt to stabilize their economy. And as you know, a debt is a debt. It's not a grant. At one point, you'll have to pay it. And things changed in Ghana. And one of the things, as I said, one of the things that they ignored was the agricultural sector. And agriculture represents about 21% of Ghana's GDP. and accounts for more than 40% of its export earnings. At the same time, it provides more than 90% of the food in the country. So the government failed to invest in increasing output in the agricultural sector that would have led to economic growth. I mean, look at cocoa. Cocoa falls in the in the agricultural sector, and Ghana is among the biggest producer, exporter of cocoa. Ghana is a major cocoa growing country, but it never paid attention to the agricultural sector. It just paid attention to the false curve that showed as if Ghana's economy was growing, which the numbers looked positive. Inflation went down. The Ghanaian cedi was gaining against the US dollar. Basically, did what Kenya is doing right now. Ghanaian traders, Ghana is also a trading country in as much as it is an agricultural country. So Ghanaian traders contribute significantly to the economy, and mostly they buy and sell products imported from Western countries and China. Everything, consumables, cars, second-hand clothes. Most of the things in Ghana come from China and the West. So due to the nature of this business, as you can predict, there is persistent strong demand for the US dollar, because the US is not going to accept payments in cedi. China is not going to accept payments in Ghanaian cedi. They'll want to be paid in the US dollar. So with the high demand for the US dollar, that of course led to continuous depreciation of the local currency, because the numbers were lying. The people were believing the economy was growing. Traders were importing more, and the demand for the dollar was high. And as you know, in the demand and supply curve, demand equals to rise in price. Once something is demanded more, then it is going to rise in price. Once something is demanded less, then it is going to fall in price. Vice versa is true for supply. So the high demand for the US dollar led to the depreciation of the local currency, and that, as you know, is going to lead to inflation, and that is what is called the vicious cycle. Not the vicious cycle of poverty, but it is the vicious cycle of currency depreciation, where our currency is going to look like it's doing good, it is doing amazing. And then if a country does not export anything, if a country does not work on its exports, for example, Ghana never worked on the agricultural sector. For example, Kenya is not working on its agricultural sector. It is not working on improving the quality of their coffee, on adding value to the quality of their tea. It is not working on improving, adding value to their milk. It is not working on adding value to their eggs. It's not working on adding value to anything that it is exporting. And so the vicious circle will continue in the next few months, because now the economy will look like it is doing amazing. Investors will flood the market, because apparently they'll hear Kenya's economy is doing amazing. So they'll flood there. And once they flood there, they'll, it being an importing country rather than an exporting country, you know what is going to happen. They will, of course, start looking for dollars for them to import into the country. The traders will look for dollars to import into the country. And once they start looking for dollars, the demand for dollar will go up. Once the demand for dollar goes up, the demand for the local currency goes down. And now the currency starts depreciating again. The government puts in measures, the currency appreciates. Then, because they're not exporting anything, because they're not adding value to anything, because it's a false curve, it's a fake curve, the currency will go down no matter what you do. No matter how much it appreciates, at the end of the day, it is going to depreciate eventually, unless you work on having export value. You work on your currency having a demand. If people are buying from Kenya, then they'll buy in Kenya shillings, because Kenya is going to demand that buyers buy in Kenya shillings. For example, when they want to buy maize from Kenya, let's say Kenya decides to add value on its maize, corn for those in the West. If it adds values, it puts input in its agricultural sector, and now the demand for Kenyan corn is high, then the demand for the Kenya shilling will be high. And once the demand for the Kenyan shilling is high, demand and supply curve, the demand and supply mechanism, the Kenya shilling is going to appreciate because it is in high demand. And therefore, it is going to appreciate and appreciate. It will be a true curve now, not the false curve that we are seeing. But once the curve goes up, looks like a currency is doing amazing, but there's nothing to back the currency doing well. There's no solidity behind. There's nothing that the country is exporting. There's no value being added to any product. There's nothing being exported. The country is just importing. Then, trust you me, no country is going to take Kenya shilling as payment. China is never going to accept payment in Kenya shillings. China is only going to take payment in US dollars. So will the US, so will France, so will the UK, and that will lead to the local currency having lower demand. And once nobody wants something, the price is going to fall. That was what happened in Ghana. They had a false curve, believed their economy was doing good. The central the World Bank labeled them the rising star of Africa. It was the Western poster boy. Nana Akufo-Addo received heaps and heaps of praises. But then he failed to do what all African leaders failed to do, capitalize on that moment. Add value to what you produce. Look at yourself as a country. What do you produce? What are you good in? If it's Uganda, so good in, it's an agricultural country. Add value to your agriculture. If it is Congo, it's a mineral endowed country. Add value to your minerals. Do not export raw cobalt. Do not export raw gold. Process the minerals before exporting them. That will have an increased value in your exports, and that will reflect in your currency. But African leaders never want to hear that. They never do that. And that is why inflation hits year in, year out. Right now, it's Ghana and Nigeria and Ethiopia and Egypt. Those are among the few countries that I remember offhand that are going through the same situation. Tomorrow, it will be Tanzania and Uganda and Cameroon. Because right now, as I said, look at Kenya. It's doing amazing. Let me not lie to you. Kenya's economy is doing amazing. It's amazing. It's doing really, really well. The cost of fuel is going down. The cost of power is going down. Cost of basic commodities are going down. The Kenya shilling is gaining every day against the US dollar. Everything is amazing right now. The economy is doing amazing, amazing, amazing. The Kenya shilling has gained by about 60 shillings in the last few months, doing amazing. But then there is nothing to back the upward curve. So in the next few months, few years, the curve will reverse because investors are now flooding the market. Investors are having confidence in Kenya because it has been labeled the same as Ghana as the highest growing economy in the world. In fact, it had a high growth rate than the United States. It had a high growth rate than China. It had a high growth rate than the Middle East. But nobody is solidifying that position. You are in a position of advantage, but nobody is solidifying that. We are not investing in the things that we are good in. We are not adding value to anything. And so, as you know, the curve is going to flatten, then reverse. So that is what is happening in Ghana. Right now, Ghana is in a crisis to a point that the president himself, the poster boy of the West, the man himself, the legend Nana Akufo-Addo, who was being praised a few years ago, like Ruto is getting praised, has conceded in a recent address to the nation that the country is in a crisis. He, however, blamed the situation on external shocks, the pandemic, and the Russia-Ukraine war. They never look at themselves. He never sees that he has never done anything to add value to Ghanaian exports. An importing country, a country that basically imports everything, is a weak country because nobody will have demand for your currency if you're not exporting anything. Who will want anything? If you look at a country like Uganda, the Ugandan shilling, nobody wants it. What does Uganda export? Why would I need a Ugandan shilling? So the value is going to go down and down and down because nobody needs your currency. You are not. Why would I need it? To buy what? You offer nothing to the world. In fact, you ask more than you offer. You ask and you never offer. So nobody is going to have demand for your currency. And once nobody has demand for your currency, it gets devalued, and the government has to spend a lot of money to most governments don't want to float their currencies because they know if they float their currencies, floating a currency basically in layman's terms is a government deciding to let the currency get its true value. I mean, I'm not going to support you anymore. Go out there and get your true value. That is what floating a currency is. But most African countries cannot float their currency because if they do, their economies are going to go down. So they have to put in measures every now and then to support the currency, sometimes above or below its real value. They do not allow it to get to its real value. And countries that have tried to float their currencies, one of them is Nigeria. Look at what is happening to them. They export nothing. So if you float your currency, you're going down. That is the situation in most African countries. They offer nothing to the world. They offer nothing to the global market. Saying they offer nothing is really an anti-truth, not even a lie, because it's saying the exact opposite of the truth. They offer a lot, just that they offer it not in the real value that they should be offering. If you look at a country like Congo, offering minerals at throwaway prices. You look at a country like Kenya, exporting coffee as raw berries. Raw coffee berries have no value. You look at a country like Ghana, exporting raw cocoa and processed cocoa. Don't know if cocoa is grown in berries, I'm not aware. But what I'm aware is that Ghana can add value to its cocoa, and that will increase their export value, and that will see Ghana in a better position than it is right now. So it is very sad when you think about how ignorant African politicians are. I'll call it ignorance because they know what they should be doing. They have economic advisors. They have advisors who claim that they went to Ivy League colleges. They have Ivy League graduates, but they cannot think about the basics. They cannot handle the basics. They cannot know that if this happens, this is going to affect the economy in this way. And so that is why Ghana is still seeking for a deal with both bondholders, and it is still facing economic hardships despite it getting bailed out by the IMF. You might be asking, how come Ghana is still seeking for deals and it was bailed out by the IMF? It was given a 3 billion bailout. Remember, a bailout is not a grant, it's a loan. It's basically somebody telling you, I hear you have a loan, so let me loan you out money so that you can pay me. Because Ghana owed at the IMF, and the IMF loaned out Ghana money to pay it. So you owe me, I give you money to pay me, then I ask you for money that I loaned you to pay me. That is the situation. So it is still in deep economic crisis, deeper than it was a few months ago, because the new loan that I gave you to pay me has interest. And now you have to pay me the money that you owed me before with interest, and the money that I've given you now to pay me with interest. So those are two interests on two loans to pay one loan, if you're getting what I'm saying. So that is what is happening in Ghana, with it still striving to deal with its debt issues. It's having debt issues even as of now. So let us look at Iran, where Iran has vowed massive and harsh response. That was the exact words that the government of Iran used in a statement that they released. They said they vowed a massive and a harsh response should Israel attack. This is after Iran launched quite a number. I've lacked the word to. Iran launched quite a number of drones, missiles, and it was hundreds. It was in the hundreds of missiles and drones over the weekend in response to an Israel strike on Iran's embassy compound in Syria that happened on April 1st that killed 12 people, including 2 Iranian generals. Israel, with the help of the United States, the UK, neighboring Jordan, and other nations, successfully intercepted many of the missiles and drones. According to reports that they have released, they're saying the damage that was done by the hundreds of drones and missiles that were launched by Iran was negligible. In fact, nobody was even injured from it. What happened was just minimal damage in some army camp. That is their statement. War is propaganda. Apart from the war that is fought in the ground, there's a lot of war that is fought in the media, a lot of propaganda that happens in the media. So you cannot really tell whether the Iranian drones and missiles had a damage on Israel. Israel is not gonna accept that, is not gonna admit that, and Iran is not gonna admit that its drone were intercepted. So you really can't tell what happened. But Israel actually responded with an offensive in Gaza that has caused devastation and killed over 33,000 people. But Iran has said, should Israel dare retaliate, they are going to offer a massive and harsh response. The exact words that were in the statement. It's an exciting development, considering I really don't care about what is happening in. I'm not even capping. I really don't care about what is happening in Israel and Palestine, and as long as it doesn't. So I'm gonna be following this development from an observer's point of view. In other news, Ghana, Kenya, Ghana is on a different story. Kenya's doctors have gone into a fifth week of strike. It is their fifth week striking. Hundreds of Kenyan doctors and other medical practitioners continue with their strike, demanding for better pay and working conditions in an ongoing nationwide strike that has entered its fifth week. It's 5 weeks since Kenyans saw a doctor in a hospital. 5 weeks since a public doctor was in a hospital. The president has continued to say that we are not going to bow to any. We do not have money. We are not going to pay you more than we are offering you. The doctors have said they are not bowing down to any intimidation and threats, and they are not going back to work until they are paid. The government is saying it doesn't have money to pay them, so continue striking. The doctors are saying you're not going to the hospitals without getting an increase. So now it's a standstill, and who is suffering? Of course, the Kenyan citizens who cannot afford private medical care, which is more than the majority of Kenyans. 5 weeks since Kenyans saw a doctor in a public hospital. In Ethiopia, donors are pledging 630 million to aid in the conflict that has hit Ethiopia. You guessed right, it was a United Nations backed gathering that raised pledges of about 630 million for Ethiopia's humanitarian crisis on Tuesday, but fell short of the 1 billion sought to help feed and support millions of people who are facing conflict in Ethiopia. Ethiopia is, by the way, Africa's second most populous country, I think, after Nigeria. The United States is Ethiopia's leading humanitarian donor, and it warned that its resources are increasingly stretched and that Ethiopians risk being overshadowed by other humanitarian crises globally. So let me tell you about what is happening in Ethiopia. Ethiopia is facing a number of conflicts. One is the 2-year-old conflict in northern Tigray, which ended with a peace deal in November 2022, but they still rouse here and there. And 45 people were killed this year, by the way, in Tigray. So it is having wars here and there, like most African countries. And the UN has jumped in and pledged millions to help end the conflict in Ethiopia. And in Somalia, Somali pirates have freed a Bangladeshi ship that they had seized for more than a month. A cargo vessel that was seized by pirates off the Somali coast has been freed, along with its crew, after more than a month. That is according to the European Union's Maritime Security Force. So all 23 crew members of the Bangladeshi flagged cargo carrier named MV Abdullah have been released. It was not immediately clear what circumstances the ship was released, but reports are indicating that they paid ransom. The pirates got their bag and they released the ship. And in other donor pledgings, looks like it's a week of donor pledging. Macron is not to be left behind. he has pledged 2.1 billion to aid war-stricken Sudan. Sudan is going through a crisis also. So Macron and other donors have pledged 2.1 billion to, one, end the war, two, address famine that is happening in Sudan. Macron spoke at the end of the international conference in Paris aimed at drumming up support for Sudan's 51 million people. The aid will go to food, water, medicine, and other needs, he said, without providing a specific timeline. So all of a sudden, they are caring about the Africans dying in the wars, and now everybody wants to give aid, everybody wants to help Ethiopia, everybody wants to help Sudan, everybody wants to help Somalia, everybody wants to help whatever war they're looking for wars to help. So that is what was happening in Africa today, with Ghana still going through economic woes despite being bailed out, not really being bailed out, despite being loaned out by the IMF, with Iran vowing massive and harsh should Israel dare attack, with beginning a fifth week of strike, and with donor pledging money here and there. Donors are all over Africa right now. If your country is in a war, then wait for the bag. 630 million goes to Ethiopia, goes to Sudan from Macron. And Somalia pirates releasing a Bangladeshi ship that they had seized over a month ago after a ransom was paid. So that was all that was happening in Africa today. Joby is coming up next in a bit with, of course, an amazing conversation like she always has. She always has amazing conversation. And Jiba Jaba is with me, and Opuku Jeff is with me, trying to sell airtime on my chat. Unfortunately, you are not gonna sell any airtime on my chat. Opoku must be Nigerian, and he's saying slide into my DM. No, we are not sliding into your DM, brother. But good luck in your scammings. And Jiba Jaba is saying all the 7 hypersonic missiles reached the target. That was the purpose. Only 4 countries have them. Wow, I never knew that. But as I said, war is propaganda, and you can never really tell what happens with, apart from the war that is fought with the guns, with the drones, with the missiles. The biggest war is fought in the media with propaganda. So, of course, Iran is going to say the missiles reached. Israel said that negligible damage was done. In fact, they said there was not even a single injury, leave alone a death, not a single injury was experienced. They said that they were able to intercept all the drones using they have the Iron Dome technology. They have that Iron Dome that that intercepts any aerial threat. So, and of course, you have to be really keen and decisive and analytical, or else you're going to be sold propaganda, because right now the narrative is Iran failed and nothing hits Israel. But anyway, shout out to you, Jiba Jaba. Thank you for joining me. I hope you join me tomorrow. And I hope the people of Ghana are going to get tough for them. It's going to get tougher for them now that they are changing. The president is leaving office, and another one will come with other work economic reforms that will see Ghana go even deeper down. Nobody talks about value addition. Nobody talks about industrialization. Nobody talks about investing in agriculture. Nobody talks about empowering businesses. Nobody talks about creating an enabling environment for entrepreneurship. All they talk about is the economy grew by, those are false curves. All they talk about is getting loans from the Bretton Woods institution, getting loans to pay loans. African economy for you. So I hope you enjoyed the rest of your day, ladies and gentlemen.